in that moment, I realized that I had no answers anymore for why my life looked like the way that it did.
Right, yeah.
And I couldn't explain anything. I had no words. I had no like intellectual thing that I could say to like rationalize why things were the way that they were. I was out of answers. And my logic was just that I had never really tried the steps before. Like, what's it gonna hurt? Can't hurt me. So let's just try it. I don't always know why things work out the way that they do. Right? I'm not entitled to an answer from God about why things happen the way that they do. Right? God, it's not God's job to fill me in on every little thing. And forgive me if this sounds harsh, but like how arrogant I became for me to expect God to like let me know why things happened the way that they did, right? To fill me in on those things. I'm not. Who am I? We don't always know what God's will is for us, but we know for sure that He wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. And so when I'm not happy, joyous, and free, that's a good barometer, a good measuring stick of like something's off with my spiritual life. Where am I not being teachable? Because any kind of unmanageability I experience in my life is because that's the area of my life I think I've got it. I think I'm controlling. So what area of my life am I controlling? If I can pinpoint that, then I can experience some freedom.
What made you want to work in treatment?
Dude, it kind of just fell in my lap, to be honest with you. It wasn't something I sought out, right? It was just kind of one of those things where, like, I think that God had more of a, He knew what I needed and what I wanted better than I did at the time, and so the position just kind of opened itself up, like the rehab that I went to, RiverSource, right? Yeah. And so, our mutual friend Garrett, right, kind of was just like, hey, dude, the spot opened up to be like a floor staff, like BHT, would you be interested? I was like, oh, that could be kind of fun, let me check it out, right? And pretty quickly I fell in love with it, dude, and for a lot of different reasons. And so that made it okay and I wasn't making that good of money at the time, but that made it okay because I loved what I did and that it was tangible, like the effect that I had on like the difference that I was making was like tangible, right? It wasn't like a corporate thing that I was doing where it was just kind of hard to see, like, am I actually making a difference? It was like I could see in these people's eyes, like stuff registering in their brain with what I'm saying, and or just whatever, right? And that made it really like there was an addictive quality to it for sure.
Did you go to
3 times.
Dude. What about before that? Or was that all the times you went to treatment?
If like total like detoxes and psych wards included, I've been in 9 facilities.
Damn.
So, or if my math is correct, so RiverSource 3 times. One of those times was just detox. Yeah. I've been in Aurora, the one in Glendale, like 4 times. And then Crossroads, and then Salvation Army twice. So, whatever the math is, 8 or 9 times. Yeah.
And is that, when did you, or how did you get introduced? Did you have to do the steps like in the Salvation Army and RiverSource? I know, well, RiverSource actually did they make?
Mm-hmm.
I forgot because I did work there too. I know they did an IOP. Like they made you go through the steps and get sponsors and stuff.
Well, you got to keep in mind the culture when I was there was a lot different. Like when you started working there was a big change. It was still very 12-step oriented and very recovery oriented, but like the staff changed. Like the people that worked there when I was a client and when I worked there were long gone by the time you joined. And those are the people who are like the pioneers of like the RiverSource's like 12-step boot camp kind of style.
Yeah.
But they were gone by that time.
Yeah.
It was still solid, but just not. It wasn't exactly the same.
Yeah, because I did definitely see a change while I was in the short amount of time that I was there.
Probably, yeah. Yeah, I bet you did. But yeah, so Salvation Army, yeah, you had to get a sponsor. Crossroads, we all know Crossroads is very heavy in the 12-step community.
Yeah, still.
Yeah, and But I just never took up with it though,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and until this last time.
Yeah. What did that look like? What do you think? What do you feel like was it?
What was the thing that finally made
Yeah.
me?
Yeah. Like, how did that pain look like?
Dude, I don't know, man. Like, so I'll try not to get too much into the weeds about this, but so what got me into finally being willing to do the steps was, I think it was God, man. Like, I had been an atheist for a very long time. And this last time that I even went to treatment wasn't for like a good, noble reason. Like, I went so that I wouldn't have to deal with the consequences of me pawning my parents' shit again.
Yeah. Like always.
Like always, right? Like, so, and so that's why I went. And so, but then when I got there, dude, I don't know what happened. I got through my detox, right? And so once I got through that, like, you know, and I got a sponsor because I knew you needed one to get your phone privileges. So
Yeah.
that wasn't even a genuine reason that I had to be there. It wasn't genuine. But then, like, one day, dude, like, my sponsor met with me after my detox, and he literally just asked me, because I knew him from before,
Yeah.
and he was like, dude, how are you doing? And I just broke down. I just broke down, dude, and it just got me. Like, I had no, in that moment I realized that I had no answers anymore for why my life looked like the way that it did.
Right. Yeah.
And I couldn't explain anything. I had no words. I had no like intellectual thing that I could say to like rationalize why things were the way that they were. I was out of answers. And my logic was just that I had never really tried the steps before. Like, what's it gonna hurt? Can't hurt me. So let's just try it. And as innocent as that was, that's all that it took. You know, they talk about a mustard seed of faith. Like, this was a mustard seed of just like willingness, and the little bit of willingness goes a long way when it comes to the world of God and stuff like that.
So this time, like or I guess that time, because you said you had already got introduced to the steps, but this time was like you went all the way through.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it was my first honest, thorough attempt at the steps. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was a trip, dude. Because where I went to treatment, like for step one, they peeled back so many layers. They peel back so many layers on you, and just like they just come at you from all these different angles.
I've heard about that, bro.
Yeah,
I never
dude.
got to experience it. You know, I went to a different treatment center, but I have heard stories about that.
Yeah, and what's cool is that same guy, Greg, that used to do that there. I work with him, and now I get to do that with him to our clients. Yeah, so I get to run those groups now. It's so cool. It's such a blessing.
That is such a full circle moment.
But
That's crazy.
yeah, dude, it was. I just sunk my teeth into it, and it. How do I explain this? Like, it worked even when I didn't want it to.
Oh, damn.
Like, I didn't understand what I was doing, but I was just doing it,
Right.
and it was like it just kind of worked anyways.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, which tells you that there's a lot of God involved.
Yeah. Yep. 100%.
You know?
Like the willingness overcame the like the understanding or like the logic behind it. You know?
Absolutely.
You were just kind of trudging along, yeah. And that's what faith actually really is. You know? When you're just doing something out of not, even if you don't understand it.
100%.
Which is cool. Damn.
100%.
So, how did you, when did you know that you had a spiritual experience, and how did that look like? Through the steps,
Yeah, so it came after my fifth step. I distinctly remember this. All my whole life I had like, I mean, just like a lot of us, right? Like an insane amount of insecurities.
Yeah.
Cared way too much what people thought about me, man. And like all other defects of character aside, like that alone is just a prison and like a hell, right? Just that one alone is enough to drive someone to drink, right? Let alone every other defect. So, but nonetheless, I had all these defects, and I did my fifth step with my sponsor. And, you know, he just let me get all my stuff out, and we just kind of sat there, and he just listened. And you know, at the very end, we talked for a little bit, and did my power hour, my hour of meditation after, did what he asked me to do. And like that next day,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I touched ground once. Like I was floating. You know what I mean? Like I think that I had never felt so good in my life. For the first time, I didn't have a care what people thought about me. I didn't care. I felt comfortable in my own skin. I felt confident. I felt like I had this drive and this motivation to do well that I had never had before. And keep in mind, like some context, like at that time of my recovery, I was willing to finally admit that there was a higher power of some sort. But at that point, I was finally willing to give my higher power the dignity to call it God. Because I knew there was something, right?
Yeah.
It was undeniable,
Yeah.
you know? So that's kind of what I knew, that like I was on my way to, that was my spiritual experience, and I was on my way to having more.
Yeah, that's such a powerful thing, bro. Like when, cause I still, like fall victim to, caring about what other people think about me, like all the time, and like it's just, it's always been embedded in me. Like still in sobriety, dude, like sometimes I'll walk into a meeting, I'll think that people are talking about me, or, I'll be scrolling on Instagram, I think people are talking about me, so, but like, yeah, I do remember, because I had a similar experience, after going through the fourth and fifth step. Like, that whole week after was like, kind of like, it was just living in the present, right? Like, I had a means to live well. I didn't care what other people thought about me, you know what I mean? And it was just, it was a beautiful experience, bro.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. And so, like, after finishing the steps, like, what's another thing that you feel like has exponentially changed within you?
So like there's two things to that. So like, how do I word this? Nothing has changed, but that's created a lot of change, right? So like the basics that I learned in early recovery never stopped working. So like, why fix what's not broken type of stuff, right? So, but in maintaining those kind of spiritual principles, the open-mindedness, the teachability, etc., that I learned in the beginning, everything has continued to change, right? So, and that's like, that's one of those things where like, that's where the faith comes in. That's where, we give God enough space to work in our life, is I apply these principles to my life, I live these steps, and then God produces the outcome. So, when I'm reading books or listening to speaker tapes or going to meetings or with a sponsee or whatever that looks like, these are things I've all done countless times before, but again, like a little bit of open-mindedness goes a long way. I hear something that totally just changes my outlook on everything. And so that's what continues to help me grow. And just like you said, right, there's definitely been times in my sobriety where I've slipped back into that old self-will of like caring too much what people think about me. I've had those moments, but even then, like I just learn from it, and it just, pain's a great motivator. And talks about that in the book, right? Like, I'm going to paraphrase, but we don't always know what God's will is for us, but we know for sure that He wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. And so when I'm not happy, joyous, and free, that's a good barometer, a good measuring stick of like, something's off with my spiritual life. Where am I not being teachable? Because any kind of unmanageability I experience in my life is because that's the area of my life I think I've got it. I think I'm controlling. So what area of my life am I controlling? If I can pinpoint that, then I can experience some freedom.
Yeah, that's such a powerful, that's so good, man. That's so powerful. I talk about that all the time too. Like everything is directly correlated to whether I'm spiritually connected or not, man. Like the way I think about myself, the way I think about others, the way I treat others, the way I think about my finances, right? And so you talked a little bit about like, speaker tapes and books you read. So what does that look like for you right now? Like what kind of books are you reading, or who are you listening to?
Yeah, so like my favorite speaker, I mean, this changes all the time, right? But like my current favorite speaker is this guy named Bob Darrell, I think is his last name. I found him on Spotify.
Is he a motivational speaker or
No, like AA
Oh, okay,
speaker.
okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and he's great. Just the way he words things that like how it works, for example, that we've heard in meetings,
Yeah.
who knows how many times, right? And we hear it so much that like we don't really soak in like how powerful it really is, because it's just a thing that we all kind of tune out. I think people realize
Yeah,
when they're reading
yeah,
it,
yeah.
because we hear it all the time, and
Yeah.
similar to the Serenity Prayer or the Lord's Prayer, right? Like we hear it so much
Yeah.
that I think sometimes, I guess I can only speak for myself. Sometimes I kind of don't pay. I'm not as present for those prayers or that reading as much as I could be.
That's so true.
But Bob, I remember one time I heard him break down the How It Works reading, line by line, and it was almost as if someone had rewrote the entire book, and that's when I fell in love with him, so I love listening to him. Been reading the Bible lately, the book of Romans.
Same, bro.
So Romans I always go back to because it's just a good way of it's just good parameters on how to be a decent person, how to treat other people, and but the next book I have in mind I'm going to go back to is Sermon on the Mount.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that was the first. I'll give you a quick funny story. So, we read the AA book, right? That's where the instructions are for the steps. And I think I had about 2 years sober. And so my sponsor, I was talking to him, and I was like, dude, I feel like something's missing,
Yeah.
And, he starts encouraging me to read some other books to grow spiritually.
Yeah.
And I remember distinctly telling him, I was like, Nick, I don't understand how reading a book is going to change my life. And it was one of those conversations like, do you hear yourself? You just read the AA book.
Yeah.
Why is another book not going to be any different, right? And so Sermon on the Mount was the first book I read, and I wasn't particularly religious at the time, but I read it, and it changed everything.
How so?
It took a deeper dive in certain spiritual principles that more than just surface level.
Yeah, okay.
Like in the AA book, it even says it. I think it says it on page 164 maybe, where it says we realize we only know a little, more will be revealed, right? And they themselves knew, the first 100 knew that there's only so much they can cover.
Yeah.
And there's only so much that they knew at the time of writing the big book. So you have to dig deeper. And books like Sermon on the Mount really it just provides different perspectives on things that we think we already know.
Yeah.
And just blew my mind.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, same here, bro. Like I've experienced that a couple times too, where I feel like I just you kind of just hit a plateau and not so much in the sense of I know everything about this now. It's just spiritually you just instinctually want to dig deeper.
Yes.
So is it based on the Bible or what?
Yes. Yeah, I'm going to butcher this horribly, so forgive me, but it's if I remember correctly, it's essentially an excerpt from Jesus, his Sermon on the Mount. I think it's in the book of Mark, where he's talking to tons of people and basically preaching to them to really kind of vaguely put it, how to be a better person, essentially, right? And it's that message, right? But it goes over his exact message, but then of course it breaks it down in more modern terms. But that's essentially what that book looks like, right? And I like what you said about hitting that plateau, because you definitely can, right? Yeah. Oftentimes we talk about the word complacency in recovery. Yeah. And that's a very real thing, right? And I've seen it with other people. I even saw it in myself when I hit about 5 years sober. It happened to me too, where my disease had progressed past where I was at spiritually. And I got to this place where I thought I knew everything. So I'd be in meetings filtering everything that I heard, like, well, that's not in the big book. What does that even mean? And I already knew that. And what's this meeting even about? Like,
Yeah.
the disease had caught up with me because I wasn't growing spiritually. It had progressed past where I was at spiritually. So that's why we need to grow. You know, bottom of page 87 in the big book tells us that we need to grow. You know, and so I don't ever want to get to that place again. You know, in fact, there's a speaker. I'll keep it anonymous, but she I heard her say, and I want to. This is where I strive to be. Right? Is she said that she's more afraid of losing touch with God than she is anything else. And like that's where I want to be. You know what I mean? Like that's my biggest fear in life is losing touch with my higher power. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's kind of like I'm so happy you brought up the Bible too, because that's kind of in the boat that I'm in right now, like where it's like I've just been digging deep in the Bible right now on Acts, you know, and I just love it because I was reading it for a long time, and then I slowly just kind of just went, went my own way for a little bit, and then God was just pulling me in that direction again. And it's just like, it's so good too. So I can't wait to get into like just the whole gospel. So I've like read John, and then now I'm on Acts. And like sometimes I really don't understand it, but I just make it a point now to read it every day, which is cool. So what are like some of the most important principles that you feel like you've learned lately that have been having an effect on your life?
Yeah, honestly, probably. I just talked about this with somebody earlier today. I was doing an actor scenario call with them.
Yeah.
One thing that I've learned that helps me arguably more than anything else, because I work in treatment and so it helps there, but also too, like just dealing with people, like, sometimes people can be difficult, like myself included, right? I know I can be difficult at times. So the thing that's helped me the most is to understand that, everybody's dealing with like the growing pains of life, and like how to grow up and stuff like that. It's just that some people do it better than others, but we're all kind of sick in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And so, if I can, if I expect, and I say this whenever I speak, but it's still so true to me that if I expect mercy and grace from other people when I make mistakes, I better be ready to show that same mercy and grace towards others when they make mistakes, right? So in essence, don't take myself too seriously. Everyone's trying to learn how to grow up in this world. And that helps me to not take offense to when people do crazy things. I've had patients threaten to punch me in the throat before. I've had some crazy stuff happen, and instead of looking at like that's like an enemy now, or like taking offense to that, or like thinking so highly of myself like I'm above that, I just see that person for who they are, man. They're just sick and they need help. They don't need my judgment.
Yeah, that's powerful. But it's hard to see that too sometimes.
It is.
That's why I feel like just constantly right, because I forget principles a lot of the time, so I constantly have to keep feeding my soul, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Keep feeding my soul with the principles, keep feeding my soul like with reading, right, because I'm constantly reminded of it, and I was just going through that just the other day, How has your relationship with God, how has it grown throughout your sobriety? Hey, I wanted to take a quick second and thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch these videos. Hope you're enjoying the conversation as much as I am. If these videos have impacted you in any way possible, I would greatly appreciate it if you hit the like and subscribe button. And if there's anything that you would like to see, whether it be like character development, something that has to do with recovery or spiritual growth, let me know in the comments and I'll implement it on my next video. Once again, thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate it.
I was an atheist for a long time. I don't really remember when I made that switch to atheism, but I essentially was for quite a while. And just through, like we talked about earlier, like just being open-minded and
Yeah.
recognizing how ill-equipped I am to deal with life on my own power. I maintained my open-mindedness to, like, what if I am wrong about this? What if I'm wrong about that? Especially when it came to the spiritual side of life.
Yeah.
And to where now, like, I got baptized October 1st, 2020 as a Christian, you know. So to go from an atheist to that,
Yeah, that's a big.
to me, that's like two extremes, right?
Yeah.
And so to me, like, that was just a testament to, like, what the program can really do in someone's life. Like as far as like my own testimony, and so that's kind of where it's at today. But I think I have a unique position in the sense that when I see people that struggle with the God idea, or they're atheist or like whatever, it tugs at a soft spot in my heart because I know where they're coming from,
Yeah.
you know, and I can relate to them and speak their language, and I know what they're going through, you know.
Yeah. What would you say to somebody like that?
So, first off, being an atheist is a very lonely place. It's a very lonely place to be in, right? It's a very hopeless state of being, right? And this is just my own experience when I was an atheist myself, right? I can't speak to everybody else. But for me, it was a very lonely place because, just like it talks about in the AA book, right? It was just, everything just was just nothingness, right? There wasn't really a true purpose behind anything. You were just left to kind of do your own thing and do whatever you wanted, and so was everybody else. And so everything just felt kind of meaningless and pointless, right? That's usually the angle that I approach atheists from, is like, if nothing has any purpose behind it, if this is all just random and randomness and there's no divine purpose or anything and like cause and effect, then why even get up? Why do anything?
Right.
And so I tug at their heartstrings a little bit. I let them know, like, there is something innately in you. There is something in you that drives you to want to get up and do things each and every day, right? There is something that pulls you. And I've had people say, like, well, it's my own personal growth. I want to be a better person. But if none of this matters, then why does that matter? Right? And you can kind of play this game. And so what I do is I kind of approach it from that angle, man, that, like, notice how, like, each and every day you wake up with a drive to do something. Where is that coming from? You didn't have to intellectually put yourself there. You just woke up with that, with whatever that thing is, right?
Yeah.
You have this natural instinct to want to connect with other people, to want to connect with the world around you. That's not an intellectual exercise. You just have this natural, like, instinct to want to do that. What is that? Is that random? It seems far more complicated than just random.
Yeah.
So, and these are conclusions that I came to myself.
Yeah.
And that's usually how I approach them.
Damn.
But softer, you know.
Yeah. Dude, seriously. Do you feel like that would have been like the advice you would have gave yourself? How much time do you have now? Like 8 years? Right?
8 years, yeah.
Like would that have been the advice you would have given yourself 8 years ago?
Yes, yeah, I would have. I don't know if it would have made so much of a difference though, simply just because, you know, when you have that, like, step one experience and you're broken with the way that you were living your life with your addiction and all those things, like, when you're backed into a corner, like, you magically become open-minded. Like, dude, sure, like anything but this, right?
Yeah.
So that's where I was at, and so, but there was a couple patients in the treatment center that I went to that, like, had a similar background experience to me with struggling with the God idea, and they emphatically assured me that it could be my own conception, and the fact that I had someone to kind of co-sign that for me was huge, and that was enough to open the door, and that's just where it started.
Yeah.
But it would have definitely helped if someone had pulled me aside and had that conversation as well. But but what happened to me also helped too.
Yeah, yeah. I was just wondering, because, sometimes, like, I was never, like, in my experience, I was in the boat of, like, I wasn't so much of an atheist, but I was just resentful at, like, this, at God,
Yeah.
essentially, And so, like, that's the experience that I came from, So I've never really had to, like, I've never had that, nobody has ever had that conversation with me, And so I don't know how that felt like.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably most people, I would venture to guess that most people that come into AA have like a vague idea of who or what God is.
Yeah.
They're just, like you said, they're just angry, right? Or they've just lost touch, or whatever the case is. But
That's why there's We Agnostics.
that's why there's the chapter We Agnostics, absolutely.
Yeah.
But again, like, and that's what happened to me too. Is it was this weird thing where, like, okay, first I was atheist, and then I started to grow spiritually and start to believe that maybe there is something out there.
Yeah.
But then there almost started to become this resentment towards God. Like, okay, if there really was something all along, then, like, why didn't God intervene here? Why didn't God do, X, Y, and Z, right? Actually talks about that on the bottom of page 45 to 46, where we look around the world at warring theological systems and inexplicable calamity, and where's God in all this, right? And my mind started to do that a little bit, but what helped me with that anger towards God is that, I don't always know why things work out the way that they do, right? I'm not entitled to an answer from God about why things happen the way that they do, right? God, it's not God's job to fill me in on every little thing, and forgive me if this sounds harsh, but like how arrogant I became for me to expect God to, like, let me know why things happen the way that they did, right? To fill me in on those things. I'm not. Who am I? You know what I mean? Like, I'm an ungrateful addict at my core. Why would God take the time to fill me in on every little thing? And so that's just where I learned those key things of, like, faith. That, like, things happen the way that they're supposed to. I'm not always going to know why. I may never know why. But I don't need to know why today.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and, like, it's funny because, like, the more and more you build that relationship, the more and more you come to terms with just not understanding, right? It's just, like, having that trust, having that faith to just walk through anything. But I can relate to that, bro. Like, why did this happen? But I mean, that's it. Basically, like, that's what the entire psychic change feels like, right? The ability to see my experience as an asset now, right? And, like, to see that God was with me all along, and to be able to, if I'm going through a situation right now, to be able to just, take a step back and see that this is happening, that God is doing this for a reason. You know what I mean? And, like, I never had that before.
Yeah.
I never had that instinct to where, like, I can see the good and the bad, I guess,
It's tough.
Yeah.
It's a muscle you got to grow.
Yeah.
And, like, by no means when I say any of these things, right, these are all perfect in theory, right?
Yeah.
But, like, I'm human too. Like, I definitely have found myself at times, like, why are things unfolding this way, right?
Yeah.
I found myself at times where, like, I'm being super controlling and I want to force an outcome in a situation, right?
Yeah.
I found myself doing those things for sure. These are all just, like, perfect theories to live by, right? And I do the best that I can to keep them in the forefront of my mind whenever I'm going through something, I've especially lately been saying a lot of the set-aside prayer lately, because I don't want to get to a spot where, where I think I know everything.
Yeah.
Because then if you think you know everything, then you only look for what you already know.
Yeah.
And then anything new that might solve a new problem, like I've missed it. I want to remain teachable and just not get a big head again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, What has been like one of some of your biggest struggles in your journey?
So mental health, right? So that's something that doesn't get talked about a lot. So like, here's my opinion on this, and I'll try not to, get too much into the
No,
weeds
you're
about it.
good. You're
But
good.
so like, this was my experience, right? Is that like I had to get to the core of the spiritual problem first
Mm,
before I could actually address anything mental health related,
mm,
right? Because in the beginning of my recovery, I couldn't differentiate what was like a spiritual problem, what was a character defect, what was a personality issue. I couldn't differentiate if it was that or if this was like a mental health thing,
mm.
because they kind of look the same in a lot of ways, right? So what was suggested to me was like, work the steps, give that some time to work, actually allow your faith in God to grow. See if these insecurities start to slip away, this depression, this anxiety, etc. And in large part, a lot of it did. But then I noticed probably around, I don't know, maybe year 6, um, I hit that plateau again. Maybe year 5 or year 6, right? I hit that plateau again, right? Nothing in my AA program had changed, right? I was still
Yeah,
doing everything I
just
needed to be doing,
yeah.
but there was certain symptoms that were getting worse. The
Um,
depression was getting worse. The anxiety was getting worse. My mood swings were getting worse, right? So, and at this time, I was very against. At that time, I was very against. I just was. I just thought mental health help. I didn't need it. I didn't think that it was actually helpful, and
yeah.
I didn't really buy into it for whatever reason. And so I was reluctant to get any help. But like I said earlier, pain is a great motivator, and so I eventually, with the guidance of my sponsor and grant sponsor, they both kind of said the same thing, that you should consider some outside help, and I did. Um, and lo and behold, there was the answer. And then once again, it's another example of like, I think I know best,
Yeah.
but that just perpetuated the problem.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
once I gave up my control and I was like, you know what, I'll take someone's suggestion,
Yeah.
the problem started to get better.
Yeah.
And so mental health has been one of the biggest struggles, just
Mm.
that piece. Um, but like, thankfully, because of my spiritual life, it never got to, and it never gets to a place where I think a drink or a drug is a solution to my problems.
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
It's just simply like my spiritual life just helps me to bring awareness of the fact that something's off.
Mm.
And then I have the willingness and the courage to do something about it because of my connection with God.
Interesting. And how is that? Like, you're still going to therapy, or do you just you're taking meds as well?
Yeah, so this is something I don't talk about a whole lot, right? But
Yeah.
I don't go to therapy. I think probably more people should.
Yeah.
Like, I guess, speak for myself again. Like, I probably should, right? Because I think it can be a great tool. I work in treatment and I see it helps a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
So I should definitely, exhaust that option. But I have done it before.
Mm.
But yeah, I went and saw a psychiatrist and, somebody who understands addicts.
Mm.
And yeah, it helped a lot.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, someone's like, I was talking to somebody in my ACA meeting that I've been going to. Oh, where I see, but he
Pat.
was telling, yeah, Pat. I didn't know if I should,
Yeah.
say his name, but whatever. Like, one guy that goes there, he was telling me that there's like different kinds of therapy, but I didn't know that. Right? Like there's different types of therapy, and like he was just going on this big spiel about like you gotta find the therapy that fits you, I guess. I don't know if you know anything about that.
A little bit. So yeah, like I'm grateful to work in the field that I do because I am privy to a lot of the new like clinical and medical modalities that are out there. Um, yeah, there's a lot of things that are tailored to people's specific needs.
Mm.
You know, there's like traditional talk therapy that we're aware of, where like
Yeah.
what most people do, which that in and of itself is super effective. But yeah, there's other kinds of things too. There's trauma therapy and stuff like that as well, EMDR and whatnot. And
Yeah, I think that was one of the ones he was talking about too.
yeah, that's another really common one. There's a big uptick for that now in the last few years, especially. Because, like, dude, I mean, yeah, like, you know, there's, again, like, back to the mental health thing, like, yeah, there's a lot of people that have been through some real stuff in their addiction, right?
Yeah.
And, like, yes, put that on a 4-step, right? Go over that with a sponsor, absolutely, right? But it can't hurt to, like, process that with a trained clinician or whoever, right? It doesn't hurt at all. You know, that's another perspective. It's another tool. You know, it's just at the end of the day, right? Like if you're in 12-step recovery, like you just got to know where your bread and butter is, right? You know, I know that my bread and butter is the spiritual disciplines of the 12 steps, and nothing ever takes place of that. Everything else is just supplemental,
Right.
for me personally, right?
Yeah.
But everything else are like great tools and stuff like that, for sure.
Yeah, especially especially drug addicts and alcoholics, like, you go through some crazy,
Oh my gosh,
just
yeah.
some very dysfunctional living, like,
Yeah,
damn near torturing yourself,
100%.
What do your relationships look like today, bro, as opposed to, like, before?
Yeah, so like I said, you know, I was a very lonely person. You know, atheism is a very lonely place because not only was I an atheist, I was just very angry at the world.
Yeah.
So, not only at like whatever God there might be, but also just at people in general. I just thought everybody sucked, and so I couldn't keep a friendship. I couldn't keep any kind of relationship, right? But today it's different. Like people actually, you know, ask me to do things, and you know, like this, right? People actually ask me to do things, and like vice versa, right? I'm capable of giving and feeling love from any loved ones in my life.
Yeah.
And it's not a one-sided thing anymore. Like I don't go to my family and demand something out of it. Like I'm eager to go see them and just have an experience with them, you know, not just have this be a thing that I can check a box and say that like, okay, I saw my family, I can ignore them now for months, right? You know, like I
family function.
right, like I did when I was using, where it's just like, okay, you know, let me go show face, and then I can just f off or whatever. But no, this is like when I go see my dad, like especially like no, like I look forward to going to see my dad and spending time with him and hearing about his life.
Yeah, he's awesome, by the way.
He's great. I love him.
Yeah.
I love him, and you know, but yeah, the relationships are fruitful today.
Yeah. What do you feel like makes what do you feel like makes the friendship fruitful? Like, what are some characteristics that you feel like makes your friendships today fruitful?
I would say it's like an old AA principle. It's the selflessness.
Yeah.
There's no hidden motive. Like I'm showing up just to figure out who you are.
Yeah.
Right? Like who are you? What do you like to do? Right? Let's go have an experience together. Right? Let's go see this movie. Let's go out to eat. Let's go hiking. Let's go like do whatever. Right?
Yeah.
Like whatever people do. Let's just go live life and see what happens. You know, and no hidden motive. There's no looking for status behind it. It's just I'm just present.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it fruitful, you know. But then also too, like I think like the other thing is too is of course don't do this with everybody, but having like a few select people that you can be 100% vulnerable with.
Yeah.
You know, that really locks in that bond, because you could call it trauma bonding, I guess. You know, but really locking in with people and like, you know, here's the real me. Here's the real me, right? Here's what I really struggle with, and there's something attractive about that with people, because it like, you know, how much trust you just put in me to tell me this says that I mean a lot to you.
Yeah.
And then vice versa. Right? And that's an attractive quality for a person to have. and that makes a great friendship.
Yeah. Yeah, it really does, 100%. Yeah, sometimes I take it for granted too, but we're honestly so blessed to
Mm-hmm.
have the fellowship that we're in, and to have the friends that we have, you know, like,
Absolutely.
dude, I used to cry for that,
Yeah.
you know, because I had nobody around me.
Yeah.
You know, like I just like you said, like I was alone, you know, and so
Mm-hmm.
like I'm just so thankful that I have the people around me that get to show me a better way of living and show me that it's okay to be vulnerable, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's okay for the past that I have, you know. It's okay to have the past that I have, you know, without other people judging me, you know.
Definitely.
It's cool, man. So like, what's been your experience with sponsoring people?
Oh, I love it, dude.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
It's so cool sponsoring other people. Again, it's just another, like, every time I sit with another sponsee, um, it it's never ceases to blow my mind that, like, I'm allowed to do this.
Yeah,
You know,
every time.
I'm like, I'm allowed to do this. Like, do you know how ungrateful and dishonest and selfish I was?
Yeah,
You know, and like how much of a piece of crap I really was.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, do you know this? Like, and now I'm supposed to help you. So like, there's that moment that still happens every single time I sit with a sponsee. But then I quickly realize that I'm no different than this guy. I'm at the end, not the end, but I'm further along in this recovery journey. So I've learned a few things along the way, aka the steps. So I just got to show this guy, like, hey, here's how you get through the steps, and that's all there is to it. But the beautiful thing is that, you know, I get to see their lives transform.
Yeah.
You know, I've got a sponsee right now. I just got to give him his 2-year coin at a men's meeting I go to, and
Damn.
I
That is crazy.
dude, he like, from when he came in and I saw him till now, like, oh my gosh, dude, like, we're family with each other.
Yeah.
You know, like, I think he's closer to my aunt than I am because he knows my aunt.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, that's a trip.
it is a trip, yeah, and you know, it just like things like that where I get to see this dude's life transform and I get to witness it and you know, and be a small part of it.
Yeah.
And it's the cleanest, most pure dope that I've ever done, and there's no withdrawal.
Mm-hmm.
There's no guilt and shame. You know, I have to get my fix pretty regularly,
Yeah.
but there's no guilt and shame after.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, that's so true, bro. Like, yeah, I'm just so used to it now that, yeah, like, I gotta do it on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
Like it's just something. It's just part of my routine now. You know,
Mhm.
it's just so ingrained in me. But yeah, it's a privilege, bro.
It is.
Honest. Like it really is a privilege, bro, and it's amazing, dude. It's amazing.
It is. I love it a lot, man. And then on the flip side, being a sponsee, you know, having the same sponsor I've had now for a long time,
Yeah.
and have him report back to me how crazy I used to be.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, because he'll say some things sometimes, and I'm
Yeah.
like, did I really do that, or was I really that crazy? You know, and then to have him be able to tell me the growth he's seen in me, right? Because
Yeah.
that happens sometimes where, like, we can be hard on ourselves. We don't see the growth, and then it takes somebody else to see it before us, right? Talks about that in the book.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sometimes cool to have that confirmation that, like, this thing is still working.
Yeah.
You know, things that he sees that have changed in me that I didn't notice at all.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, he's a trip, man.
He is.
I love Nick, dude.
He's good.
Yeah, he'll point some stuff out to me too as well. Like as far as like he didn't sponsor me since I've been sober, but
Yeah.
you know he sponsored me for the past I think 2 years, so he's definitely like seen the growth and it's awesome, dude. And he remembers everything too.
He remembers
which is
everything.
such a trip. Like he remembers everything. Like from every check-in that I have with him, he just remembers everything. I'm just like, bro.
Yeah, but that's not what you said 2 weeks ago. That's what it's like,
Yeah.
wait, what?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't even know what I said 2 weeks ago.
Exactly, yeah, that's a trip, dude. So yeah, bro. I appreciate you doing this with me, bro. Seriously, it
Absolutely.
means a lot, man. One more question, bro. Like, what's been the biggest inspiration that you've received? Even if it was like recently.
Like from another person.
From another person, from something that you've read. I know we talked a little bit about it, but something that has just stuck out.
So there's two people that come to mind
Mm-hmm.
that I often think about or talk to or whatever that really kind of have had really impactful moments in my life.
Mm-hmm.
One's a sponsee, the same one that picked up his 2 years.
Yeah.
Because if I sit there long enough and think about his story and like where he came from and where he's at now and what I get to see, I get tearful, you know. And then the other one was the owner of the sober living that me and you went to,
Oh yeah.
and the things that he did for me in my early recovery. He drove an hour south just to go interview me at my treatment center to make sure that I was the right guy for the bed, that the one bed that he had left. And not knowing if I was going to get that bed or not, just the fact that he was willing to do that, it provided this sense of like safety in me that like, you know, this dude truly cares.
Yeah.
That he's willing to protect the integrity of his houses to come interview me and make sure that like that this is a good fit. And so that dude I keep in touch with regularly, and same thing with my sponsee, of course. And anytime I need like a little pick me up or whatever, and I hear from one of them, that's what does it.
Man, that is damn. I didn't know he did that. That's,
Yeah.
That's awesome, dude. I remember like going to when he had his tenure
Hmm.
thing. Oh my god, dude.
So many people came.
Dude, I was low-key, I was emotional, bro. Like that was very powerful.
It was.
You know, that was extremely powerful. Like that was probably one of the most powerful experiences that I've had. Well, that I've gone to. It was just it was crazy to see the amount of people that he has impacted.
Yeah.
It was insane, bro. Like
So many people.
yeah.
And yeah, and there was more than just was in that room.
Yeah, exactly.
But that room alone was, oh my gosh, dude.
Mm.
Some real heavy hitters in there that he's impacted and influenced, and still to this day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. No, I appreciate you doing this with me, bro. I've been wanting to do it with you for a while. And yeah, bro, I just want to say thank you. I really look up to you. Seriously, dude. I know that we're friends and all that stuff, but like I really do, bro. Yeah, I just want to let you know that like you're a big inspiration. Yeah.
Thank you, brother.
Bro, like just since I've come in, you know, since I've stayed sober at least, you know, I watch you grow and like we check in with each other regularly, which is really cool, you know, and I consider you a close friend, so I do appreciate you doing this.
I feel honored that you asked me, man.
Yeah.
I feel the same way for you too, dude. Anybody that can turn their life around and follow this program is a man that I would like to be.
Yeah.
You know, so likewise, brother.